Here we are in the saloon with a table. Things have just gone black. Looks like we're going to have an afternoon thunderstorm. After getting the galley tops laminated, it was time to trim and get them sanded and flat. Well, that's looking like a great sized workspace. I think once that's sanded up, epoxied and clear coated as well, that really will look a treat. The other thing is with that rosewood finish and the stainless steel sinks and the stainless steel tapware, I really do think, set against the white cupboards, that the whole thing should really look good. And again, on the cabin sole with the rosewood and beech, I think the whole lot should look a treat. Well, here we are in the saloon with a table. That template, I must say, I like the shape of it. It's just got nice curves, and following all the other dimensions in the boat, it really does look completely made for this space. Getting in there, it didn't look exactly smooth because this is very, very flimsy, just, what is that, 2.5 millimeters. And so with the smallest of bumps that was moving when I was getting in, with a solid table, you wouldn't see any of that, of course, and that felt fine getting in. You always have to take into consideration with a fixed table in a boat that there is going to be a little bit of a awkward getting in, getting out, because the seating doesn't move and you don't walk up to it from wherever you want to get in and sit down. But I think this looks good. It looks like, if anything, that it could be a little bit deeper when you're sitting against the back, but really I don't want to do that because I just don't want it to be awkward to get in and out. I think I can afford to add a little bit on this edge. I was having a look from the companionway when you come down and in that entry there, and I really do think I can afford to add a little bit there, about 65 millimeters, and that will just give you a bit extra space when you're sitting in this position, and it's not really going to interfere with that passageway through the boat. But otherwise, I'm pretty happy with that shape. And I've got an added little feature that I'm going to add to this as well, just to make it bling a little bit more. Getting in the other end is really easy, and there's always the option, by the way, in the future, if I really do feel like I need extra table space, I could add a drop leaf off that end to go right to the bulkhead, which would add an extra spot for somebody to sit. And then I could also add a leaf on the other side to go out to the other side of that saloon seating. So those options are there, but in the first instance, I think this is going to do the job for probably 90% of the times when myself and whoever else is on board. And so having moved here and stopped, this has become clear that this is not enough room, because you don't have the room behind you to move away from the table. This is like the maximum for me, and I'm not a very big guy, so I think that anybody else bigger than me, this would be uncomfortable. And I kind of saw myself sitting in this position to do computer work, but I think that this needs to be shortened a little bit, just to make this a little bit more user-friendly, and especially for people who are a bit bigger than me. Well, I had a bit more of a play and a consider of everything before I took this out of the boat, and so a couple of points with that. Although, as I said, I'm going to take a little bit off of this end, and that'll be about 40 millimeters, I actually can add that to the other end. In fact, I can add 50 mils to the other end. What I did was I measured the end of the table to where that cushion back was, and then looked at the other end, and there was much more room at this end. And so because you're going to be able to be stood up to get past there, that will actually be easier to get past than this end. So basically what I've done is I've made the gaps the same at this end from the end of the table to the cushion back, and that end from the end of the table to the bulkhead. So all in all, I actually don't lose anything off the size. In fact, I gain an extra 10 millimeters. That's a little bit of a bonus, really. That's good. Another thing to point out is, as you might have noticed, I've actually got quite a spacer between the bottom of that table and where those cleats are on the mast pillar. So basically, the thing that I didn't really consider or take into consideration when I was doing all the measuring for those cleats for the mast pillar to support this table is the thickness of the cushions. And so because of that, I actually have made that bit of a boo-boo, and so I need to create a spacer of 65 millimeters, which just lifts the bottom of that table up to take into consideration the thickness of those cushions. So, you know, try as I did, you can't think of everything. You move on, and some things you just have to get sorted on the way. Okay, well, I'll have to talk quick. Things have just gone black. Looks like we're going to have an afternoon thunderstorm to cool things down at the end of a very hot day. Anyhow, that top is now cut. Fantastic about that. And as you can see, there's just one little scalloped part missing. That's just because it was that much short of being one piece. So what I will do is just make a little piece and glue that in place. That'll be fine. The rosewood will go over the top of that and you'll never even know. So I'm looking forward to, if the weather permits, getting the first coat of epoxy on before the day's out. So the plan is, with that little filler piece to fill that void, is to just use a dowel. I'll just drill a hole straight through both the piece and the main top to centre where the dowel needs to go, pass that through with plenty of epoxy glue, and that will hold that more than adequately. Well, those tops have come up really nice. That belt sander really makes short work of getting them sanded and nice and flat too. You do have to be careful, as I've explained in the videos when I put the cabin sole together. Those belt sanders can dig in, so you really have to make sure you've got a hold of them and hold them nice and flat as you're moving where you want them to. But anyway, they've come up really, really nice. That little piece that snapped off when I was actually chiseling to get that edge nice and straight, you might remember, well, you can hardly even see that. And in fact, with those corners, 90 to 95% of those corners where those little fill-in bits are going to be covered by the rim of the sinks. So you'll hardly see any of it. And I think that once it's all put together, you'll hardly notice those fill-in bits. The other thing is, you might have noticed this edge here, it's way too narrow to put a belt sander on that. It would just eat through that. So I'm going to just sand that off with the orbital sander, where I can give a lighter touch. It's less aggressive. But otherwise, come up nice. And now it's time to get on and laminate the saloon top.
Spring is in the air, like a the drums near, buds are bursting. Beautiful green, it's like a love scene with waves of flirting. Seasons change us. Maybe it's just me and mine, where thunder has had its way. When kindness is portrayed as blind and glitter to the rays. Oh, no need to beg pardon. No need to beg pardon. Piano playing, wind chimes swaying. I'm longing for summer nights. Down
Off to bed, are you, little mate?
by the ocean, high emotion, legs covered in mosquito bites.
The prior mentioned leap forward is definitely underway. There is a lot happening on and for Mistress lately. Please stay tuned in for much more ahead. My goodness, what a lot of gear to fit. Please like, subscribe, hit that bell and share. I'd really appreciate that.
Glitter to the